Hello and welcome back to the Go-Karts and Good Times YouTube channel. Today I'm finally going to do something I've been waiting to do for a long time. If you're no stranger to the channel, you should be familiar with this mini bike. It's basically what launched the channel and was my main project for the first summer of recording videos. And if you've been keeping up with it, you'll know that I swapped on this 5-horse Tecumseh after the 8-horse that was originally on it finally blew up and gave out. Ever since, it hasn't run that well, and I haven't been very happy with the size of the engine, so I finally managed to upgrade. Being fortunate enough to find this snowblower for a super insane deal that has a 9-horsepower Tecumseh. Now with some of these engines, they come with weird tapered shafts that won't work for conventional clutches, but I lucked out, and this one is a 3/4 shaft that will fit right with the clutch and everything else. You can't quite see it here, but this also has the same intake style and carburetor style as the 8-horse that was on it before, so I should be able to swap the parts directly on, unlike this 5-horse which required an intake manifold adapter to be created. If you notice a difference in quality or the video looks a little bit different, that's because instead of filming on my phone, I'm filming on an actual camera. It's not a great one by any means, but it's good enough to get the ropes of all the different adjustments you use when doing real photography. So I figured I'd try it out and see if the picture is good enough to use for my videos. The first step in getting this engine swap underway is getting the engines removed. Because I haven't filmed on this camera before, I wasn't familiar with the 20-minute cap on clips, so I guess you missed a little bit of the process. But we have the engine taken off of the mini bike, and the engine is almost removed from the snowblower, but a couple of these bolts are seized, and we're having to use the angle grinder and the torch to get them loose. While the engine is still on the snowblower, we are going to opt to remove things like the exhaust, the carburetor, and anything that attached it to the snowblower also has to be removed, which is hiding under this cover with another seized bolt. Another thing I'm not familiar with is the battery life of this camera. You may have just seen me take it off of the snowblower, but not much else. As you can see, we do have it out and separated on the bench here. That's because last time with the 8-horse, we didn't actually take out the governor wheel that was inside the engine. This time we are going to go about doing that and then threading a bolt in the hole where the actuation arm would come out. And we're also going to be changing the oil. A couple things that'll help extend the life of the engine that weren't done with the last one. All we have to do before getting it back together is apply a bead of this black RTV around the perimeter of each of the case halves. And you also may notice that I am not being as detailed with the disassembly process with getting both engines off and torn apart, because this is all covered in previous videos on my channel. As another part of overhauling the mini bike, I'm also going to improve my chain tensioner. Having a fixed point in a hard wheel is not the most ideal way to have it set up, so I'm going to opt to use where the previous chain tensioner was as a pivot point for an actual arm. The plan is to use a skateboard wheel sandwiched between two of these metal bars that swings on the pivot point where the previous chain tensioner was. Then with the spring, this will be pulled tight against the chain, hopefully holding it in place. Unfortunately, the camera did die again last night, but it was a pretty good ending spot, so we stopped working anyway. Here I am back for another day, And last night we basically got the tensioner finished. As you can see here, what I'm going for is a spring-loaded arm with the wheel against the chain. I'm a little bit worried that the spring won't be strong enough and it might hit the frame here, but I do have multiple holes so I can move the spring or even double up the springs because these were the only ones I had, and all this can be adjusted after I get the engine on. As far as the engine, I do have all these side cover bolts now torqued down after the RTV was let to set up, so we have a good seal. Some of you may not be the happiest with my choice to leave the engine cover on this one green, and I would swap it with the old 8-horse cover, but that one has snap studs for the recoil, and this one has a nice big handle on it because it's from a snowblower. I'm not that concerned about a color theme because this bike is pretty cobbled together to begin with, and I don't think it'll look bad either way. My main goal in this video is just to get it riding with all of the mechanical issues solved. Any cosmetics will be dealt with in another video if I deem it needs to be. Which brings us now to the moment of truth, actually getting the engine in the frame and seeing if everything works. Which means now I'll get the tripod set up and get to work. Now I'm going to move on to getting the exhaust and the intake on so that I can actually start the engine up and start putting it around to test out any changes I need to do to the chain tensioner. Even with the engine loosely attached, as long as the exhaust and the carburetor on, I can now try for a first start of the engine. Obviously the tuning isn't great because I haven't adjusted it from the orange engine that used to be on it, but at least we know that it runs, and now I can go about tightening the engine mounts where I think it'll have to be. With everything bolted down, I just have to fill up the air in the front tire, which is flat, hopefully not punctured, and then I can attempt to take it on its first ride. I don't expect it to run perfect. I did adjust the carb a little bit, but this is something I'll have to fine tune later. Because of the burst front tire, it's almost unrideable, but it seems pretty good. I also forgot to mention that the clutch that's on it is the one that I used when I originally built the bike, and I got that secondhand to begin with, so it slips pretty badly. But the engine sounds really healthy, and everything seems to be fine. The chain didn't come off, and while I didn't go that fast, I did get up to a pretty decent speed just getting around the yard. Realistically, this means I need to get a new front wheel, and then actually take it for a real test drive and see if there are any issues. Then I can button things back up and consider it done. Now I just want to install the seat before I actually take it for a real rip. you should be able to see that it absolutely rips, but there are a couple of small problems. The clutch does slip pretty bad, and it still doesn't run amazing. It tends to die at idle, but I can at least go full throttle and have it not bog, so it's pretty usable as is. And as a last-ditch effort to get the 5-horse to work, I did replace the carb, so the linkage and the spring also has to be adjusted. I found that one of my 2 chain tensioner springs does tend to pop off, so I'll probably want to find a better spring to replace these 2 little ones. As you can see, they're very close to the chain, and it's not optimal. I also found that when braking hard, this wheel actually does rub the frame, and a stiffer spring should help. I also have to hook back up the kill switch, which wasn't being used at all with the 5-horse because I didn't ride it much and never got around to fixing it. So after I tackled those things, it should be pretty alright. Finally, the kill switch is connected and is functional, and the throttle actually feels way better than before. Again, this linkage isn't perfect, but everything does work as it should, and this stage of the mini bike is really function over form. It's still not super smooth, but I also did manage to get the idle down from where it was before. After a short test drive, I have some results. It is good because I did beat my previous top speed, which was somewhere in the mid to high 30s, beating it with a 39.5 mile an hour. But at high speed or at full throttle, the engine surges like it's running out of fuel and acts a little bit funny under full load. This is another carburetor tuning issue or even a fuel delivery issue with my fuel line that wraps around the engine, but you'll never really be experiencing these conditions when riding trails, so I think for now this is okay, and this is something I'll work on gradually as I ride. It's been a couple days and I finally got to editing this video, and I noticed a lot of my clips were cut off early. I don't know if that's because the camera has different timing between the press of the button and the stop and start of video recording to my phone, or I just jumped the gun on a lot of them, so I'm sorry for that. And I think even though I still have some more changes to make to the bike and I didn't show a lot of riding, this is about where I'm going to end it. There should, as I've promised more than once and unfortunately not been able to deliver, be a separate video with me actually doing a lot of riding on the bike. There should also be a separate video with me making other improvements, like maybe even adding fenders, dealing with the little problems that it has now, and getting it really dialed in, as well as making it look better, like painting that side cover. So just know there is more future content with the mini bike. As it sits now, however, it's not half bad, and the garage is a mess, so I'll have to get that cleaned up and deal with the snowblower, but I think I'm pretty much all set and I achieved what I wanted. I've never really had one of these apart, and I didn't know how the inside actually looked between pulley and chain drives, and it's kind of nice to know that it has all these parts which could be useful on future projects. And about doing more riding, barring that one day that was mid-60s and super nice out, it's been pretty crappy, even getting a little bit of snow. In any case, hopefully you are happy to get an update on the mini bike and see the improvements I've been waiting to do on it for the longest time. Hopefully you learned something or got something out of the video, or at least enjoyed it, and if you did, I'd appreciate it if you liked, commented, or even subscribed to the channel. And for now, this is me signing off.